Cool. Phil Breen and this Necessary Entrepreneur Hot Takes.
Okay.
This is where we ask you some questions back and forth and get your take on them. Start with a nice generic one. Beatles or Stones?
Stones. Longer body of work.
Yeah, a lot longer.
That's why. The cream of the crop, top 10 songs, probably Beatles, but much longer body of work.
Yeah, it's more you can be in a Stones mood but not be in the mood for some of the Stones stuff.
That's why my favorite channel is on the XM is Little Steven's Underground Garage, and I go around with some customers that listen, where they play more Beatles or Stones, and I swear it's Stones because
There's more stuff.
early 60s to now, Beatles quit.
Yep. Quitters.
Stones.
8-tracks or cassettes?
Cassettes. 8-tracks are awful.
Did you like the sound at least or no?
No. Nothing redeeming about them.
Nothing. Fair enough. CD or vinyl?
For me, CD. Because I put all my record collection in Start the Store back in '89, and it made more sense for the owner not to have a turntable, because that's where the real fun rarities come in, is vinyl. And if it was in my basement instead of my store, basement I'm not getting paid and paying bills. Store, it's getting out to people that can appreciate it. So
Right.
definitely CD for me.
And then even you're working in the store, the full-time job of having to flip the record every 18, 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I've become very lazy, and it's a lot easier to do CDs because they can go longer, and especially now that I work by myself most of the time, it's a lot just easier to put a CD on for 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes or whatever, longer.
Yeah.
Like the ones I make are, the blanks are 80, so I play those like mix CDs. It's just much easier.
Yeah, I just recently put away my Christmas records. So get lazy, take one off, just set it here, pull out the next one, and it's like, had a stack of this to guess I'll try to piece all this back together now and put it on the shelf till next year. In the turntable days, are you like an Ortophone fan or an Audio Technica for the stylus cartridge? Does it matter?
I've been blessed. Again, I say a lot of stuff because I'm spend so much counter time. I was blessed by not having a very good ear, as far as I never really spent a ton of money on the stereo, made sure the needle was good, but I would rather have more records and a good stereo than a great stereo and not as many records. Back when I was, compiling my 3,000 or 4,000 records when I started my store when I was about 30, I probably had a collection of at least that many, I think, at least 3,000. But I would always want to have more records and a good, I know I had an NAD turntable, I think it was, but I was never an audiophile or, would know exactly what I had or wanted. I wanted more records, not the nicer turntable or the nicer speakers or whatever. Always been blessed with not a great ear. Just like, SACDs or half-speed master things. And customers, God love my respect when they can tell the nuances and difference. Not as easy for me. Like when they came out with a fancy Born to Run, my favorite album of all time, I heard things I had never heard before. But certainly not enough for me to buy the high-end stereo and the high-end, half-speed master vinyl or crazy, SACD or half-speed CDs. Just, luckily never that important to me.
Yeah, I started buying some half-speed stuff, like I did, obviously the Bullet Cherries I just had in there, but put on RAM, heard them a gazillion times my whole life, starting on 8-track, it was one floating around, and then it's like, oh wow, all this is there.
And that's great, but it's just not enough for me, not as important for me to spend that money or time actively seeking it out, because again, when you can appreciate it, great, but heck, I think I'm losing some of my hearing now anyway, and it's just not as important.
When you're putting it on, you better be there to listen to
Absolutely.
the nuances, or because if otherwise, what's the point?
Correct.
I know you were talking when we had the headphones on in there. When you put on something for like attentive listening, are you a stereo system guy or are you a headphone guy?
I'm not a headphone guy. Just if I really want to hear it, then obviously just no TV or no anything, and just play on the stereo and hear it. But no, I haven't. I think back the headphones takes me back to when I lived at home, and I'd come home at night. And if you better not wake your parents, but I'd be keyed up from night, so plug in the headphones and a long cord, and not necessarily blast it, but you didn't want to wake them. But again, I had so many, when I lived at home, I had so many records, I had lots to choose from, but it had to go on the headphones because things you tell, because I started having kids late, so I'm 63 and my kid's 24 and 22, and you don't know what it was like because we were always nice. So when we came home, to grandma and grandpa's, you had better not wake them, and you had headphones, or if you want to make a phone call, you've had that phone since 6th, 7th grade or whatever. We had to stretch that cord out for any kind of privacy, and you better hope mom and dad were in a good mood, or you wouldn't get on the phone.
Oh yeah, and then we're waiting on another call to come in.
Oh sure. So it's like so a lot of things you remember of growing up, and that's the last time I think I had headphones. So brought back memories of coming home at night and plopping on a record and getting a magazine out and maybe reading that while you listen to music at night. So
Yep, or the notes.
good memories, yeah. Oh yeah, or the notes, sure.
Yeah, my son will be walking around trying to stream or whatever, and it's like it gets in my head because it's not like it's in one place and he's walking around with it, and it's like, oh my God, put some headphones on.
Mm-hmm.
Or my wife would be like, well, you always listen to music growing up, didn't you? I was like, yeah, with headphones on, or they would have killed me.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think I ever had anything that would have been objectable, but gosh, yes, people now, the kids, no question, there are certain things they have to play when they're by themselves, and certain things they better not play in front of mom and dad.
Oh yeah, there's that too. I was just thinking like just in general of having noise on. Turn that down. Turn that off. Put your headphones on.
Yep.
Best concert ever?
Springsteen. New Year's Day. It was Darkness Tour, so I guess that would have been '79. He played for almost 5 hours, and it was in Cleveland. I mean, well over 4. Longer than it took to drive there. Crazy.
Wow.
He's my favorite. My favorite 10 concerts are probably Springsteen. Back in his prime, now I don't know that. He was just awesome when the Foley Street Band, the Born to Run, Darkness, the River tours were just the best it got for me.
That trilogy is pretty sweet. And you like Born to Run more than Darkness?
Oh, absolutely. Born to Run's my favorite album. I can't see that ever changing. Means the world to me. Time and place. Every song. All 8 are wonderful. People ask me that all the time because I've got them framed in my store at the top of my top 10. And 5 through 10 could probably change if I did it again, because that was probably 15 years ago. I got them framed and did that. But top 5, Born to Run being one, I can't ever see that changing.
We had to see him twice. Well, it was more recently. He did that River tour again. We saw that down at the Yum Center. And then he was up at whatever U.S. Bank Arena is called up here now, the Coliseum.
Right.
It needs to be bulldozed, but...
Yeah. First time I saw him at the Coliseum, there was only like 3,000 people. That was before he broke, and they cordoned it off. And then, saw him lots of... Any big basketball place in the last, Louisville, Indy, here. Just great shows.
We had floor seats to that, and we're close. The sound is so terrible in there, and he has so many people playing. It's kind of overwhelming. Then we went to the Louisville show. I don't know if it's where the seats are padded or something down in the Yum Center, but at least it sounded a little cleaner.
Well, they've also done, obviously as time goes on, they figure out how to make Shed sound better.
Yeah. Worst concert ever?
Replacements. One of my favorite bands of all time. Again, a story I tell all the time over the counter, but not for the podcast. Bogarts. They were sold out. I mean, crazy. And they loved the band. And my friend and I, Matt, are across the street drinking at dollar bills. And Paul Westerberg and Bob Stinson come in, basically trip over us. They were smashed. My friend said, "This is great." I go, "No, this is terrible." I was right. The only song they played that was more than one line you could recognize, they thought they were in West Virginia and tried to do Take Me Home Country Roads. It was one of their legendarily sloppy drunk, totally drunk on their you-know-what show. It was awful. Less than a year later, the best show I ever saw at Bogarts was Replacements. I paid my money again, and they were the right level of drunk, and it was wonderful. So that's an easy answer for me.
This is a big one, especially with tonight. Reds or Bengals?
Reds. I like baseball more than football, but I'm caught up. I mean, I'm loving this last couple of years that the Browns have spent some money, and
feels good.
Here we go. Yes, it's because the Reds certainly aren't, but baseball is I've always liked it better, and Big Red Machine, and I like both obviously, but Reds would be my answer. But I hope they win tonight, obviously, because the town's so much more fun now that the Bengals are doing well. It's great.
Isn't it?
It's great.
A whole different dynamic for sure. What do you want your legacy to be?
I don't know. Now that I've got the two most important things in my world are my son and daughter, it's like, I don't know. I made a little difference in some people's musical life around here. Again, I love the fact that people come up and say, you turned me on to this and I used it in my wedding, or you turned me on to this and now I saw him so many times and I met her there. I mean, I've heard those kind of stories. I wish I would have written them down. My biggest regret, without question, is that I didn't start keeping a log the day I walked into the record store in '79, because I could have done podcasts, sitcoms, books. I mean, 40-something years of retail. I wish I had a better memory, because I've seen and heard so many crazy, cool, interesting, awful things.
Right.
It just absolutely. So I guess my legacy would be, Phil's was always a place people could come and get to fill their music Jones, I guess. And it was, I like to think I made a little bit of difference in some of these people's lives. And a lot of great people worked with me over the years that have gone on to do some nice things. They were smart enough to get out of the retail business, but have gone on to do really good things. And they'll say that how much they had fun doing that. So that makes me feel good too. you know, professors, big people in business, you know, people working for themselves, and they'll say, boy, I really miss, you know, working that. And I'll tell them, I miss having you, but you were smart to get over the wall and move on with your life. You know, so I don't know. I guess, you know, not to get too schmaltzy, but I think, you know, I think Northern Kentucky was probably a little bit better place for having the Phil's around for a while.
Well, I mean, for me, it was the only place to go.
Appreciate that.
So we didn't, I mean, I went to everybody some, and I still love it, but it's like we didn't cross the river. And like I said, I'm talking about driving, and I had to get on 275 to go to Phil's. We didn't go into Cincinnati for
And those are the
anything.
stories I've heard too, you know, where people say, well, you know, a guy came, you know, he'd actually done 8 years as a Marine and was saying, I can't put in words how excited I would be to ride my bike from somewhere in Villa Hills to your store in Crescent Springs. My mom, I didn't tell her how far I was going until she says, wait a minute, this cassette, the only place there is. And so he got busted that way. You know, serves our country for 8 years, and then, you know, comes in the store a couple of days ago with a son about 10 or 12. He said, I want you to know how much Phil's meant to me. And he went to like the Guns N' Roses in-store or on sale thing. And it's like that. You know, hearing that kind of stories make me so happy that people still have those memories. You know, the Iron Maiden picture I have in my store from 1983 at Record Alley, and that's 40 years this summer, and people still remember being there.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, it's just, you know, the Alice in Chains. We had a couple truckloads of dirt, and if you dug in, you got, you know, a couple people got tickets to the show back in the early 90s. You know, and somebody posted that flyer not too long ago and just brought back great memories. That was, I think, 91, back behind the store in Fort Thomas. You know, some crazy stuff like that.
Did they find the tickets? Were they in there?
Well, it was a laminate for them. You know, like there was
okay.
100 laminates, so you got keychains and swag, but a couple people got tickets, and the guy that won it, you know, posted on social media that flyer. Heck, Matt went on to be a contestant on Survivor, which is pretty crazy. Small world.
Cool.
Yeah, real good guy. And then that, you know, he put that on there, and that's just, you know, it's just neat to, you know, I've had a few in stores but I never really actively went looking for it. But, you know, I had a few people play my store that I loved that went on. You know, Jason from Jason and the Scorchers was pretty cool, and Jesse Mallon played there. A couple people played there that, you know, went on to be some things. LOAR played across the street where you said you first described. You know, we probably had 400 people shoved sitting there at the performance stage. That was pretty intense. So, yes, I've had some fun. But I never was one to really actively try to, you know, like I hated going backstage to those shows. I was offered several times, and I've been back, you know, a lot of times, but I never really wanted to, you know, pursue that too much because, you know, let the artists, you know, have their time. But so I never really tried to get too many people to come to the store or whatever like that. But I did sometimes. And so again, to answer your question, we put a pretty good little product out there for some people and maybe provide some musical memories for them. So. They got my opinion if they walked in the store about anything I was talking about at the time. Big Carolina basketball fan, and I was bashing the 4-letter word that's 7 miles away from them, and some guy listened to my brother and I talk, and he came and goes, I love coming into a place that says that. I go, I'm giving you a discount, pal.
Nice. Do you have a hero?
Do I have a hero? Can't say that I do. I've been very fortunate, to have those people, but I've been very, very fortunate. You know, my wife has been the CPA, and, you know, we've been together. She's almost 38, 39 years, married for 31, but could never have possibly done it without her because the money saved by doing that and her, you know, being the smart person business-wise, I will not lie. I'm definitely more, I know the music and know what to put in the store, but some of the other stuff. So been very fortunate to have, you know, a lot of friends and family that help support it, but you know, she was obviously there's no way there'd be a Phil's without her, you know, helping me behind the scenes and doing what it did, because 6 stores, but opening 4 in a year, the year you got married, and she was doing all the paperwork. It's like that, you know, I can't even put in words how silly that was back in the day. And to think that, so that, you know, put us on the map and things like that. And a lot of people, you know, when you could tell people, oh, I in 6 stores. So for that few year period, you'd go to record or, you know, shows and stuff, and the label guys go, hey, this guy owns 6, whoever you're here to see, and act like that's a big deal. It's like, you know, whatever, because no one, you know, there was lots of great stores, and I'm sure there were stores that did more than my 6 put together, but having 6 at one time was pretty silly, independently owned, and that wasn't much, because the better ones were smart. You know, everybody's never moved from their spot the whole time they were around. I wish I kind of would have done that back in the day, maybe just stayed in one spot. You know, some of the other places, you know, Shake It's one spot and done that. Plaid Room, you know, one kick-ass little place, and they'll do way better than I ever dreamt of doing, because you lose something every time you move. But again, we hopefully made a little difference in some people's lives and had a lot of fun. But as far as pivotal moment, I don't know, just there's been so many different changes, and I guess not having to answer anybody made it a little bit easier to survive. because it was tough. I mean, it's stupid tough now as far as what you have to do to make so much less than you ever did back in the day.
Yeah, meanwhile leases are going up and everything else.
Yeah.
Cost of living.
A lot of adjustments, yes. Because again, it's as we discussed earlier, you don't have to have music. You want music, and so that makes it a little tougher.
Did your favorite location of all the ones you've had?
Well, a soft spot for my very first one in Fort Thomas. That was fun. That was a lot of great times up there. And when I opened up, Drug Emporium was a killer store. Yeah, that was, you might be too young to remember that. It was like a Target with a little bit more emphasis on a drugstore.
Yeah.
And then there was a video store between us. So the three of us took up one side of a pretty cool plaza in Fort Thomas, supported it real well, and videos were on top of the world back then. And so I opened up in a really happening place where a lot of times when, the four stores I opened in '91, Sight and Sound was dead in the water. They were terrible. And they said, we're just downsizing. No, they were terrible, so they needed space, and they thought I would help them. And it should have been the other way around, and it was billed to me as it'll be the other way around, but so that was wrong. But first one, I'd say my first store. First thing you always, near and dear to you.
Right.
A lot of memories there.
I think Crescent Springs was the first one I remember where that was like the happening spot for a long time.
Oh, and like I said, Fort Thomas was definitely more hard rock oriented, and Fort Mitchell was more independent, alternative oriented, and they kind of had their own little. Organically, that became the thing. Like I said, the buyers, because we're down in Fort Mitchell. Nick and his crew were definitely more hip to alternative stuff, and the people I might have had in Fort Thomas a little more hard rock oriented. And there was a time we had six that I did a lot more behind the scenes and spreading out, doing the orders for all the stores and stuff, and I really wasn't on the front lines as much as I am now. I do like that again, being able to, anyone who walks the door is going to see me and be able to talk to me or annoy me or tell me a silly story or whatever, who knows. But it's that part I like, because it was all about the people, because I certainly never made much money, so it's more about the relationships and the music for what I did, because I probably could have figured out a way to make more money doing something else. Just ask my wife. So, but I kind of got you've got this much stake in the game, so I stayed with it, and soon I will probably try to find someone that would want to maybe buy it from me, keep me around for a while, and keep it going. That would be because I'm not getting any younger, but we'll see. There needs to be places like that, because people will appreciate sometimes they walk in, they don't know what they're going to find, like we discussed earlier, and they might see something that triggers a pleasant memory to them, or I haven't heard this in for a while, or this movie, or this magazine. I've got old magazines. I've got all kinds of nonsense laying around in there. And so people will say, this is great, I found this, and it makes it worth going down there.
Yeah, what are you looking for? Well, I'll know when I see it, and maybe I don't get anything and come back 2 days later and blow $100.
That's music to my ears, and that's what I want to see and hear, absolutely. You never know, and that's the part of these things, because that's the way people used to do shops at bricks and mortar. Everyone shopped at brick and mortar, and now obviously it's too easy to click and go online, so you cherish when they do come in, and you can provide something that makes someone smile and leaves. Pretty cool.
You got some regulars, it's like Cheers.
Oh, sure.
What's strange is when I walk in, most of the time I don't hear you talking about music at all. It's usually about sports.
Or TV shows, certain things like there, things like just anyway. Again, there's maybe when you couldn't have anything you'd ever want music-wise at your fingertips, you talk more about music. Because I say all the time, I said I was a fat guy behind the counter that kind of was a tastemaker. Because in the '80s, if you came in, Dave, and said I like Springsteen, who would I like? Oh, try Southside Johnny, or try I like whoever, try this. I found about Warren Zevon by looking at a Jackson Browne album, reading liner notes, like you said, things like that. So you were way more important to people. People said, oh, back then is when you used to see it a lot more. Oh, you told me about such and such, used as my wedding song. Well, now they're going to find it by, go to a website, hard rock and wedding songs, or things. Yeah. You can find anything like that. So you don't need the guy behind the counter. I miss that. But, but the people that still are regulars at record stores, a little bit more old souls, a little more, appreciate still holding it. I appreciate when you say, I still want to have the physical copy. But obviously, less and less do that. But it's nice when that does happen. Someone buys a vinyl or a album. I hate when people call them vinyl. Album or a CD, and they, appreciate it, and it means something to them.
Yeah, good deal. Well, I appreciate it.
Good fun, brother.